I beseech you, by the living God, tell us if you're the Christ, the Son of God. And Jesus said, I am. And you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming with the clouds of heaven. Blasphemy! The high priest tore his robes. Blasphemy! What further witnesses do we need? You've heard his blasphemy. What is your judgment? What is your judgment? He deserves death. He deserves death. He deserves death. The men who were holding Jesus were mocking him and beating him. They blindfolded and said, prophesy. Who strikes you? Prophesy. You Christ. Who is it that beats you? Prophesy. Now the servants and the officers had made a charcoal fire because it was cold, and they were standing and warming themselves. Peter also was with them, standing and warming himself. And a servant girl saw Peter standing in the light, and she looked at him and said, this man was with Jesus. Peter denied it. Woman, I don't know him. He went out to the entrance, and another servant girl saw him and said, this man was with Jesus of Nazareth. Again, Peter denied it. I do not know the man. Still another insisted, saying, this man also, he was with Jesus, for he too is a Galilean. Peter again denied it. Man, I do not know what you're talking. I do not know the man. While he was still speaking, the rooster crowed. The Lord turned and looked at Peter. Peter remembered the saying of the Lord. He told him that before the rooster crows today, you will deny me 3 times. Peter left. He went out and he wept bitterly. Pilate went back outside to the Jews and told them, I find no guilt in him. They were urgent, saying, he stirs up the people, teaching throughout all Judea, from Galilee even to this place. When Pilate heard this, he asked whether the man was a Galilean. And when he learned that Jesus belonged to Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him over to Herod, who himself was in Jerusalem at the time. Now when Herod saw Jesus, he was very glad, for he had long desired to see him, because he had heard about him. He was hoping to see some sign done by him. He questioned Jesus at length. Jesus made no answer. The chief priests and the scribes stood by, vehemently accusing him. Herod with his soldiers treated him with contempt, mocking him, arraying him in splendid clothing. Then Herod sent him back to Pilate. Pilate was sitting on the judgment seat. His wife sent word to him saying, have nothing to do with that righteous man, for I have suffered much because of him today in a dream. Pilate called together the chief priests and the rulers and the people and said to them, you brought me this man as one who was misleading the people. And after examining him before you, behold, I do not find this man guilty of any of your charges. Neither did Herod, for he sent him back to us. He has done nothing deserving of death. Now at the feast, the governor was accustomed to release for the crowd any one prisoner whom they wanted. So when they gathered, Pilate said to them, "You have a custom that I should release one man for you at the Passover. Whom do you want me to release for you? Jesus, who is called Christ, or Barabbas, a man who was thrown into prison for murder and an insurrection in the city?" "Barabbas! Away with this man! Release to us Barabbas!" Pilate said, "Then what shall I do with the man you call King of the Jews?" "Crucify him. Crucify him! Crucify him!" Pilate said, "Why? What evil has he done?" "Crucify him! Crucify him!" Pilate addressed them once more, desiring to release Jesus, but they kept shouting, "Crucify him! Crucify him! Crucify him!" Pilate took Jesus and had him flogged. The soldiers led him away inside the palace, and they called together the whole battalion, and the soldiers twisted together a crown of thorns and put it on his head, arraying him in a purple robe. "Hail, King of the Jews!" Spitting on him, mocking him. "Hail, King of the Jews! Hail, King!" Pilate went out again and said to the crowd, "See that I am bringing him out to you, that you may know I find no guilt in him. Behold the man." Jesus came out wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe. And the chief priests and the officers saw him, and they cried out, "Crucify him! Crucify him! Crucify him! Crucify him!" Pilate replied, "Take him yourselves and crucify him, for I find no guilt in him." The Jews answered, "We have a law, and according to that law he ought to die because he made himself out the Son of God." When Pilate heard this statement, he was even more afraid. He entered his headquarters and again said to Jesus, "Where are you from?" Jesus gave no answer. Pilate said, "You will not speak to me? Do you not know that I have the authority to release you and the authority to crucify you?" And Jesus answered him, saying, "You would have no authority over me at all unless it had been given you from above. Therefore, he who delivered me over to you has the greater sin." Pilate sought to release Jesus, but the Jews cried out, "If you release him, you are no friend of Caesar. Everyone who makes himself a king opposes Caesar." When Pilate heard these words, he brought Jesus out, sat down on the judgment seat. It was the day of preparation of the Passover, about the 6th hour. He said to the Jews, "Behold your king." "Away with him! Away with him! Crucify him!" "Shall I crucify your king? We have no king but Caesar." When Pilate saw that he was gaining nothing, but rather a riot was beginning, he took water and he washed his hands before the crowd, saying, I am innocent of this man's blood." The people answered, "His blood be on us and on our children." He then released for them Barabbas, and having scourged Jesus, delivered him to be crucified. Mocking him, they stripped Jesus of the purple robe, put him in his own clothes, and they led him away to crucify him.